I was advised by friends to try it with different men to enhance my sexual experience. I did so, but then I used a disposable Reddit account because I didn't want this to be associated with my partner. I've done something I now realize was wrong, and I feel extremely guilty about it. I've realized that I've been unfaithful to my husband, and as a result, he's asked me to leave. I'm currently staying at a hotel until the situation is resolved. I've run out of savings, and no one will take me in. My husband and I have been married for about 5 years. I'm 36, and he's 35. We met in college and quickly became close. We started as friends, and within a few months, our feelings grew, leading us to start dating. Our marriage has always been amazing. My husband is what you'd call a picture-perfect partner. He takes care of everything, he's attentive, and he's simply amazing. Our intimacy was great, and our communication was top-notch. I made a mistake recently. I suggested we open our marriage to try new experiences, and now I'm facing the consequences of that decision. My husband's trust in me has been shattered, and I'm just wondering if there's any way to regain what we've lost. The thing is, despite our marriage was awesome, but over time it started to feel a bit dull. It wasn't a sudden change, but more like a slow fade of excitement. Everything was perfect. We were head over heels in love, discovering each other's quirks and just enjoying being together. We were passionate together, and every moment felt like a celebration of our love. But as time went by and years rolled by, a routine crept in. What used to be thrilling became routine. Our conversations, while still meaningful, shifted to daily tasks, work updates, and future plans. The spontaneous and adventurous moments became rarer and rarer as responsibilities piled up. I began craving something new, something to bring back that initial thrill. Our usual routine, while comfortable, started feeling boring. It wasn't that I loved my husband any less, it was just a desire for change, a break from the same. My desire for excitement led me to suggest opening up our marriage, thinking it could add some spice back into our lives. I thought it would be a way to explore new things while still cherishing our relationship. I didn't realize it would cause so much mess and hurt us both. Our bedroom activities were getting pretty too. They weren't the exciting, passionate experience they used to be. Instead, they felt routine and lacking in excitement. I missed those moments when just a touch could send tingles down my spine and every kiss felt like fireworks. Now it felt like we were just going through the motions. I wanted that spark back, that deep connection we once had where our bodies spoke volumes without words. But it seemed to have faded, and now everything was just predictable. I held back from talking to my husband about how bored and stuck I felt. I felt kind of bad since he was handling all the bills and payments. I never really thought about bringing up anything that might shake up our marriage. However, I did try to shake things up by suggesting new things and trying to surprise him. But it felt like we were stuck. We were no longer as close as we once were. It wasn't as passionate as it had been. I'd never thought about opening up my marriage. It wasn't something I'd ever considered. It wasn't part of my upbringing. My husband and I hadn't discussed it seriously at first. When I felt the need for excitement, I didn't think about an open marriage. It was my friends who planted the idea in my mind. Our friend group was small but close. We'd been together since high school. There were about 5 of us. We shared everything, including our relationships. I was struggling, so when I mentioned how boring my marriage had become, I was hoping they might have suggestions to add some excitement back into our lives. We often talked about our relationships, and my friends were always full of ideas and advice, which is why I decided to talk to them about how I was feeling. That's when they suggested that I try other men and that I could do that by opening up my marriage. That's when my friends pitched the idea of opening up my marriage. They were really into open relationships and started sharing stories. They told me how it had given their marriages a new lease of life. They said it had made things more exciting and brought more passion into their lives. Some even said that their marriages were on the brink of ending until they tried this unconventional approach. At first, I thought it wasn't for me and that my husband wouldn't go for it. But as time went on, their stories got more intriguing. I started to see the appeal and wondered if it could bring some passion back into our relationship. The idea of exploring new connections and feeling desired again was these thoughts kept on popping into my mind. As time went on, my friends were convinced that an open relationship would be the answer to my prayers. I wasn't so sure, especially knowing my husband's views on loyalty and commitment. Still, they kept at me, and I was curious about what it would be like to try something new. One night, after a few drinks with my friends, I decided to bring up the idea with my husband. I waited for the right moment, catching him in a good mood after work, but his response was immediate and clear. He wasn't interested at all. He stuck to his guns, believing in the strength of our bond and the promises we made to each other. He didn't see the point in bringing others into our relationship. He believed in the sanctity of our marriage and the promises we had made to each other. I respected my husband's boundaries and wishes, even though I felt a pang of sadness about the idea being shot down. I had really wanted to try it, but I knew pushing too hard wouldn't help. I knew it wouldn't help, so I dropped the topic after he made it clear he wasn't interested. When I met up with my friends next, I shared how my husband had reacted. They reassured me that this initial reluctance and hesitance of his was normal and that with time he would come around. My friends kept pushing me not to give up. They said that if we opened our marriage, things would get way more interesting than they usually were. They thought my husband's hesitation was just because he wasn't used to the idea and that he'd get used to it over time, despite my husband was firmly against it, but my curiosity about an open relationship only grew stronger. It felt like a tiny seed had been planted in my mind. No matter how much I tried to push it away, my attraction to experiencing something new kept pulling me in. I know it was selfish, but the temptation was just too powerful to ignore. I started subtly bringing it up again, hoping maybe my husband would change his mind. But each time he shut me down firmly, it all came to an end. He sat me down and made it crystal clear. He said the topic was off limits and that he wouldn't change his mind. This rejection made me feel resentful towards him. Because of my husband's refusal, I started to pull back from him, albeit subtly. It wasn't something that I planned, but rather a natural drift that seeped into our interactions. I still cared for him deeply, but I couldn't help feeling let down and frustrated that he wouldn't change his mind. I began to feel a bit bitter, not towards him as a person, but towards the situation. I knew it was my own doing for pushing the issue, but in those moments I was disappointed and a bit resentful. My friends kept egging me on, telling me about how exciting and free their lives were. They also told me to break away from the dull routine that had settled over my marriage. I was curious and took a risky step. I figured my husband would never find out, so I went ahead with it, keeping it all hush-hush. I talked it over with my friends, and my friends were cool about it. They said they'd help me find someone suitable for this little experiment and that they would help keep it a secret from my husband too. Unfortunately, my first attempt hit a snag. The guy I approached had a strict rule about open relationships. He wouldn't do anything unless both partners were fully on board with it. I should have lied, but I didn't. I was still pretty new to the whole thing, so I was honest with him. He immediately turned me down and said that was wrong. I respected his honesty, but it did leave me feeling a bit frustrated. I was still keen to explore and ended up meeting someone at a club with my friend's help. The atmosphere was electric and, in a moment of impulsiveness, I crossed a line with this person. My husband was out that day, so I took the person back to our house and we slept together. The encounter left me feeling a bit all over the place after the person left. Of course, I couldn't let them stay at my house, they were still basically a stranger and my husband would be back in the morning. We exchanged numbers, agreed to keep in touch, then I went to bed. I was tired but also kind of excited, despite the guilt I expected to feel. It wasn't as heavy as I thought. Sure, it was there, but I also felt relieved and oddly excited. It was like I had rediscovered a part of me that had been dormant for ages. The next morning, instead of feeling overwhelmed with regret, I felt surprisingly alive. The buzz from the night before was still lingering, and I couldn't deny the physical side had been intense and satisfying. When my friends asked how it went, I couldn't help but share my excitement. I told them it was great, and for a moment, I felt like I was living a life full of excitement and spontaneity. Little did I know I felt a bit overwhelmed with regret, but also surprisingly alive. The buzz from the night before was still there, and I couldn't deny that the physical side had been intense and satisfying. I'd felt things that I hadn't felt in forever. When my friends asked how it went, I couldn't help but share my excitement. I told them it was great and that I'd enjoyed it. For a moment, I felt like I was living a life full of excitement and spontaneity. Little did I know that this was just the beginning. It was just the start of a journey that would take me further and further away from the life I once knew. As time went on, I found myself slipping further and further into this double life. I tell myself it was just some harmless fun, like exploring a new hobby or trying a different restaurant. But deep down, I know I was deceiving myself and my husband. He never signed up for any of this. I tried to justify my actions by telling myself that it was basically an open relationship. I started seeing other people on the side, even though I knew it was more than that. I was lying to my friends to keep things hidden. I was constantly juggling lies and cover-ups. My friends became my partners in crime. They helped me create alibis and kept my secret safe. Without their quick thinking and support, I would have been caught. I felt guilty because in a way, they were the only reason I started cheating because I kept seeing other people and I started to drift away from my husband. It was like we were in the same house but living separate lives. I thought mixing things up would help, but it only made matters worse. We hardly talked anymore, and when we did, our conversations were awkward. I stopped paying attention to what mattered to him, and I even neglected the household chores, which used to be my responsibility. He complained a lot, but I was too wrapped up in my own world to notice or care. It was like I had blinders on, focused only on my own desires and ignoring everything else around me. The gap between us just kept growing, like we were living in separate worlds. It genuinely took me a while to realize how much damage I was causing when my husband found out about my affair. It was a friend who spilled the beans. She felt guilty and told him because she knew. He didn't deserve to be lied to like that. I didn't realize she was the one who told him until later. I think my husband went through my phone after she told him. He must have looked at messages and taken screenshots as evidence for whatever was coming next. Maybe legal action or just conversations with our family. He confronted me the next morning with all the screenshots he'd taken. He was angry and heartbroken. It was like everything we'd built. Everything fell apart in an instant. He was hurt, felt betrayed, and I was filled with regret. He said he'd never forgive me for breaking his trust and going against our promises. He said I had gone against his wishes and broken our vows. I tried to say sorry, but he wasn't ready to listen, and I felt like my words fell flat. He was beyond furious. I've been with him for a long time, and that was a level of anger and devastation I'd never witnessed in him before. In his rage, he demanded that I leave the house immediately. He begged and pleaded because I had nowhere else to go, but he wouldn't listen. He didn't care about my pleas, he just wanted me gone. He made it clear that I couldn't even take the car and toss my belongings onto the porch. I stayed outside for hours, sobbing, banging on the door and begging for him to reconsider and to let me back in. I'm even surprised the neighbors didn't call the cops to make I was getting a noise complaint about how loud I was being. I felt utterly lost and regretful for my actions. I didn't know what to do next. I had created this mess. I was filled with deep regret. I screwed up big time. Sitting outside on the porch indefinitely wasn't an option. I had to figure something out despite not having much cash. I called for an Uber. My husband had always insisted on separate phones to manage our finances better. He wasn't being mistrustful, but he knew I had a tendency to overspend, so the Uber took me to my parents' house. I was hoping they'd take me in despite our rocky relationship. Unfortunately, their place was already packed. My younger brother and his family had moved in due to money troubles. He couldn't keep up with his payments, so his house got repossessed. That meant there was no room for me. They turned me away immediately. I felt desperate, so I reached out to I had no choice but to start calling my friends one after another. Each call ended with a flimsy excuse, and it became clear they weren't keen on lending me a hand. I thought they were my ride-or-die friends, yet when I needed them the most, they turned their backs on me. I was at wit's end. My family and friends had all turned me down, leaving me feeling utterly abandoned and betrayed. I thought I could count on them, but when I needed them the most, they had excuses ready to avoid helping me. It shattered my trust in them and left me questioning our friendships. I had to check into a hotel every day, feeling like an eternity, hoping for a call or message from my husband. I was waiting for a sign that he might have tried to make things right and ask him to take me back. I've reached out to him many times and told him everything, but he still won't respond. I was shocked to find out from a friend that someone we both know had told my husband about what was going on. I was really angry to hear that she had betrayed me. I'm wondering why they couldn't talk to me directly if they had an issue. I'm here on Reddit looking for advice on how to salvage my marriage. I know I messed up. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to make things right. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back my husband's trust and show him that I'm committed to making things right. I'd appreciate any guidance or words of wisdom. I haven't had much of an update, but I wanted to address some of the comments that have been flooding in. There are a lot of them, so I'll just give you a quick overview. I know I've made some mistakes and I'm not here to defend what I did. I know cheating is wrong, especially when my partner never agreed to an open relationship. Let's keep the conversation civil though. I've been bombarded with DMs too. While I appreciate the advice, some of the messages are just adding salt to the wound. I messed up and I hurt my husband, but I don't need constant reminders of that. Many of you suggested that I should just. Some of you have even suggested that my husband should divorce me, that it would be doing him a favor. I appreciate your perspective, but I think you're missing some key details. My husband and I have been through a lot together, and one mistake shouldn't define our entire relationship. I understand the skepticism, especially since I cheated multiple times. However, my husband and I have a history that runs deep, and I believe in second chances. I'm willing to work hard to earn his forgiveness and rebuild what we had. As for I'm cutting ties with them. They played a significant role in pushing me towards this betrayal, and I won't let them poison my life any longer. It's a tough lesson learned, but sometimes you have to let go of toxic people to move forward. Update: it'd be great to find something that pays enough to keep me afloat and housed. I'm still trying to reach out to my husband, but it's been a struggle. I tried to connect with his family, hoping to plead my case or at least get them to understand my perspective so they could help me talk to my husband. Unfortunately, it seems my husband has already shared his side of the story with them and they've taken his side without hearing me out. It's very disheartening and frustrating to be judged without a fair chance to explain myself. They were very rude to me. Despite this, I haven't given up. I'm continuing to send messages and make calls, and the fact that my husband hasn't blocked me gives me a glimmer of hope. I know it's going to be an uphill battle, but I'm determined to keep trying until we can have a real conversation and work towards resolving things. Update: Reddit, here's another update on where things are at. Unfortunately, I haven't had any luck finding a job yet, but I'm trying to stay positive and keep searching. However, today brought a major blow. I was served with divorce papers. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And I had a bit of a breakdown. I reached out to my husband, said things I regret and then tried to apologize, but he's still not responding. It's really sad to realize that my hopes of reconciling with him are fading fast. The reality of the divorce papers has made it all too real. I know some of you might be pleased with this result, but I'm not ready to give up just yet. I'm still holding on to a little hope that we can work things out somehow. Quick update: I've found a potential job opportunity. It's not a high-paying position, but the hours seem manageable, which is a relief. I have an interview scheduled for tomorrow, so I'm hoping for the best. It's a paid position, and the hours seem manageable, which is a relief. I have an interview scheduled for tomorrow, so I'm hoping it goes well. Wish me luck. Hey, Reddit, I have another quick update for you. It feels like this ordeal has been dragging on forever, and it's becoming clear that my husband has no intention of forgiving me. We're headed to court soon, and I'm starting to feel anxious about my chances because of the proof of my infidelity. I had hoped we could work through this, but it seems my husband isn't open to reconciliation. I've tried everything, even suggesting couples therapy and asking for another chance, but he's not interested. On another note, I didn't get the job interview I mentioned earlier. The atmosphere felt wrong, like they were looking for someone to exploit, and it didn't sit well with me. I'm doing well, but I'm still looking for a job. I'm optimistic that I'll find something suitable soon. For now, I'm just hoping for the best. Wish me luck. Reddit update: the divorce was pretty standard. Nothing dramatic, and we didn't have much to divide up. Mostly because the major assets like the house and cars were in his name, which left me with very little to claim. On the bright side, we didn't have any debts to sort out, so that's a relief. As for finances, I received some alimony, although it's quite modest. It'll cover my stay at the hotel for a short while, which is better than nothing. I managed to land. I've been working for a few weeks now, and while the pay is just okay, there is room for growth. It feels good to be back in the workforce and to have something to focus on. The job isn't perfect, but it's a step forward, and I'm hopeful that it will lead to better opportunities down the road. It was a rough ride on Reddit, honestly. The comments and DMs were brutal. No sugar-coating there. I know I messed up. I got ahead by cheating, and I'm not trying to dodge that fact. But I wish there was a bit more understanding, considering we're all human and flawed in our own ways. As for my living situation, I've been thinking about renting an apartment. The problem is the cost is sky high, especially with the housing crisis going on. I'd have to find a roommate to make it work financially. I'm not sure how active I'll be on here. I might take a break from this account or even delete it. It's been a roller coaster sharing my story, but it's time for me to focus on picking up the pieces in real life. Goodbye, Reddit. I've moved on from my ordeal, but I wanted to come here and share my experience so that other men will be careful about the people they choose to trust and give access to their lives. I had trusted this woman. In fact, I had trusted her so much that I got down on one knee to propose to her. She treated me like I was a fool. She treated me like she wanted to use me. Or, to be more accurate, the witch had used me. I was lucky to have caught on before she had the chance to finish me. If she had gotten away with her plans, I probably would have killed myself because I would have had no reason to live. I should have seen the signs. She had been acting weird ever since I asked her to become my fiancé and we started planning our wedding. That's when I found out. I'm not keeping her name private because when the witch wanted to ruin my life, she spared no expense meeting her. It turned out to be the moment when I made the worst mistake of my life. I couldn't believe that the girl I had met back then in college had turned into the spiteful witch I knew her to be. I had done everything for that woman. You can think of me as Nate, not my real name. My real name is Nate. I'm 30 years old and I've known Mitchell for about 5 years. She was just starting college when we met. I'd already been trying to start something of my own. I was working in a new startup as their project developer. I was just trying to build up a bit of experience before I could go after my real dreams. I'd done everything for this girl. I'd met her in our company when she'd come to apply for a position. I told her there was no vacancy, but she was trying to find a job and pay off her student loans. I was impressed by how intelligent she sounded. It's not something you see every day in women, especially blondes. I was so surprised by how she could hold a conversation that I asked her out the next day. I probably acted on instinct and didn't vet her well, but from the little conversation we had, I loved how she communicated. I had been curious, that was how I got sucked in. Before I could even say jack, I was paying her student loans and sorting out her needs while I was still trying to take care of myself. Michelle got out of college and said she wanted to grow her YouTube channel because she saw potential in it. I had been supportive since she hadn't gotten I was okay with her doing whatever, mind you. I hadn't officially asked her to be my girlfriend. We were just very good friends, and I was thinking of popping the question soon. She started her channel and it grew. She told me that her users were asking her for more content and that she wanted to venture into travel and tourism because of that. That was when I knew I had to tie her down. I asked her to be I should have just seen her willingness to travel as a red flag. She had already told me she loved me, so how could someone that had said that want to start doing travel content? It didn't make sense. I should have begun seeing the signs from here. I should have, but I had been oblivious because I thought that maybe I loved her, but that was a lie. I had thought she loved me too, so that was why I had I had imagined a future with her. She had accepted to be my girlfriend and she moved into my place. Well, partly because her roommate had left her and she couldn't afford rent on her own, we began living together. I had agreed to her creating her travel content. She never ran it by me except that first time, but I hadn't said anything about it because she just traveled to locals around our city and it was usually a one-day trip. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was being reasonable and she was making money for herself, even though I never saw it. I still provided everything for her, including money for her hair and nails, and I even gave her money for her trips. I bought all her content creation gadgets. I guess I was an idiot. Then she started traveling all the time. I asked her to take a job in my office, but she wanted to travel instead. I think this is where she met her affair. I had been looking out for her, though. While she was seeing someone else, I was even more stupid and asked her to be my fiancé. I did this after we had a serious fight over her traveling. She had started booking flights to places with a flight time of over 6 hours without running it by me, and I wasn't okay with that. Well, she had. I apologized and forgave her because every relationship has its problems. She'd stopped traveling and started trying out restaurants. I dated Michelle for over 2 years and then proposed a month after our major fight. She'd assured me she loved me, so I asked her to marry me. I was convinced there'd be no more problems. She'd promised me there wouldn't be, and I believed her. We started planning our wedding and married life together. I wanted to buy land and build our dream home for the children we were going to have, so I opened a joint account. That was my second mistake. It was such a stupid move. I don't know how naive I was to think I could open a joint account with a woman. I had trusted her. I had put my life savings and the money we were using to plan our wedding in the same account. I didn't want the stress of opening 2 bank accounts, so I did that. You'll understand. I was wondering if I was the only person contributing to the wedding plans for our dream house. She was also making contributions, like in a month she would put about $1,000 into the account. I was putting my entire savings from that month's salary into the account. I thought I was doing it for the person I loved. I wanted to have a good wedding. I was chipping in all I had to afford the best, but I had no idea I was about to be played for a fool. I had no idea the witch wanted to leave me and run away with her lover and take all my money. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't seen that chat on her laptop. Fortunately for me, she hadn't gotten away with it, though I had. I took immediate action. I saw it. I had made her pay for even thinking of trying to double-cross me. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I wasn't there at the right time to go through her chats. I wonder if I'd have known that that was what she was plotting. I got home from work exhausted and went to the room. I got there and found out that my fiancé of almost 8 months had left her laptop on standby mode while she was in the shower. I just wanted to check the time, but my phone was in my pocket, which was by the bed. I clicked it and immediately saw a message pop up. "I can't wait until you're finally free. We can take all his money and start the life we deserve." I was shocked and shaken to my core when I found out. I'd prided myself on being a man who didn't show emotion and faced everything with a cutthroat approach. He was planning to leave me and take all my money with her. I'll admit I was stupid to trust her. I guess I was a bit naive in the past. I trusted her, and this was how she had the upper hand. When I read the message again and again, I tried to understand why. It wasn't like I wasn't providing for her. I gave her everything she ever asked for. As I'm sure you've read at the beginning of this story, I paid off her college loans. Loans. That was how she repaid me. I noticed things started to go downhill immediately. I knelt down and asked her to marry me. It was like she no longer respected me. Then I went out of my way to open the joint account with her. I told her how much she could use for the wedding and how much was for our land. I had close to $750 in that account. I had put $000 in that account and handed it over to her on a plate. She had gained my trust and then struck at the moment she had planned, but my eyes had been opened to her schemes. That was my third mistake. I recall once when she was still doing her travel expeditions, and my friend told me my girlfriend had been cheating on me. She was away on trips that took over 3 days without me. He told me she definitely had someone on the side or she was willing to cheat on me. So we decided to test out his theory. This was what had made me trust her. She had passed the test. The plan was for my friend to meet her at the airport or wherever she was heading to next and try to persuade her. My friend had the skills to get her to sleep with him. He could charm a lot of women, and I'd seen it firsthand, so I thought he was the perfect man for the job. I gave him her next travel itinerary. He'd met with her and told me she'd stayed away from him like he had herpes written over his forehead. He'd tried to chat with her on the plane. He'd also told me that during his stay, he hadn't seen her. The times he'd seen her, she was trying out a restaurant or coming out of a gift shop. Both times, she was alone. He'd even shown me pictures. Everything had been so believable. Unfortunately for me, this was how I decided I trusted her. She hadn't cheated on me, and my friend from high school had attested to it. I didn't know about the facade behind that event. I had been oblivious once again, but that's why I had decided to trust her and ask her to marry me and open a joint account with her. This meant that whatever was mine was hers. You are all free to go. I know I've made some mistakes, but I don't think you all would understand how I felt seeing the message on that laptop. I had decided to investigate. They were to meet at a hotel during the weekend, so I waited until then to follow her. Unfortunately, she had gone anywhere during the weekend. It was like they had shifted their plans. I asked if she didn't have. I was determined to find out where they were going to be that weekend. I was also keen to discover who the mysterious lover was behind the messages. The man had never met me before, so I was surprised that he was so keen to cause me problems. I was curious to know who the man was that was okay with being with someone who was already in a relationship. I also wanted to meet the guy who was. He was so calm about taking money that I didn't think anything of it when I asked her. In fact, she got irritated and started defending herself, as if I was the one doing something wrong. She asked if I had anything for her to do that weekend, so I dropped it. But I was still curious. I went to the bank and found out that Michelle had moved over $300. I was absolutely shocked when I found out that she'd taken $300 from my account. I'd questioned the bank and they said I'd approved it. She'd even brought my signature and called me in front of them to prove it. The money had been transferred to an untraceable account. Michelle had told them it was for planning the wedding. Since I had approved, they had gone ahead with the transfer. They hadn't known I didn't approve it. This meant she had gotten her lover to act like me. It had been believable to the bank. She'd even faked my signature so perfectly I'd been so ashamed of myself. I'd locked the account immediately and gone after Michelle, but I knew if I confronted her right away she might run away. I needed to find out who and how she'd started cheating on me. I called another friend. I got in touch with a PI agency and asked for their help. I wanted them to track my fiancé's location and who she had been meeting with for the past 3 months. My friend told me he would get back to me in a day once he had all the information. I guess this was when Michelle, my fiancé, had probably sensed I had. I had a feeling something was up, so I went to check on her. She wasn't home, so I called her. She said she was spending time with a friend for wedding planning. They had a lot to do the next day and couldn't come home. She left bright and early the next morning for her friend's place. I kept quiet while she explained, then I asked her if she'd taken money from the account. She quickly denied it, saying she was going to take money tomorrow and needed me to call the bank ahead of time. I told her I'd get the go-ahead from the bank, but I already had my suspicions. I ended the call and wished her good night. The next day, my friend had sent me pictures of my fiancé cuddling up to another man. The man was always wearing shades and a face cap in all the pictures, as if he couldn't be seen. He got back to me with a name, Wallace. But I was sure that wasn't the man's real name. He'd been with her on most of her travel expeditions. The one before, she'd promised me it would stop. Then he was also with her after she'd stopped traveling. It had been going on for 2 years. I was devastated. She wanted to leave me. My friend also found out that they had booked a flight to Morocco. They didn't have a return ticket, which made it clear that they were running away with my money and weren't going to return it. The ticket was for a flight that evening. I was pretty annoyed, and then the woman had the nerve to call me and say she needed to get some money from the account, but they wouldn't let her. She started getting loud, saying her money was in there too and I had no right to. I told her to meet me at the bank in an hour. Do you know what she said? That she had somewhere else to be and she was busy planning our wedding. I was shutting her out. She was avoiding the talk and stalling with her anger. When she was done ranting, she cut the call. I could tell she was on the move, so I knew I had to be on the move too. I needed to find out who her lover was and get the FBI to come with me to the airport because I had a traitor to catch. When I found out who her lover was, I had almost drawn blood. You recall when I said I had. I got my friend to test if my fiancé was cheating on me. It turned out she had cheated on me and my friend had lied to me. He had slept with her and had been sleeping with her. How had I found out the truth? It always finds its way out. My PI got the true identity of my fiancé's affair when I'd been trying to stop them from leaving with my money. When I got to the airport, I found out they'd already boarded. There was my friend, someone I'd known since high school. He'd wanted to run away with my future wife and my money. The hatred he had for me was so intense that he wanted to see me suffer. I got my wife arrested, and it turned out my friend was wanted for fraud. He was planning to run away with my wife and then lay low for a while. I would never have guessed something like this would happen to me. It was surreal. Even now, I still find it hard to believe. I charged my fiancé to court for forgery and fraud. This woman had the nerve to sue me for withholding access to her funds. How stupid could she be? She never contributed anything to the account. There was proof to show for it. Then she tried to move my money without my permission and disappear to Africa. I won the case by a landslide. She was made to transfer back the money and serve community service for 2 months. Then she had to pay a fine. She transferred only $250. I was owed another $50,000, but the court ruled otherwise. I never saw my friend again. In fact, I doubt I could even call him a friend after all he had done. I was dealing with Michelle and wanted to make her regret it. So I started from her friends. I told my PI friend to share the information of her deceit and infidelity with our social circle, but that wasn't enough. I needed her to be publicly humiliated. I was really humiliated, so I made a YouTube video and posted it from an anonymous account. I told her followers how she had cheated on her 2-year relationship and tried to take money from a joint account. I also posted a snippet about how she had been so unremorseful. When I confronted her in court, she told me she had built a life with me for over 5 years and wanted to leave. She said she deserved her fair share of my hard-earned money. I had earned money, and I couldn't believe how audacious she was. I posted it on YouTube and got her logins from my PI friend. I posted it on her channel too. She called me an hour later, after I posted the video, and begged me to take it down. I made sure all her YouTube followers reported her account before I took down the video on my end. I went on all her socials. I also posted her infidelity and tagged her, and they were trolling her there too. I didn't want to be done with her, but then I had read some of the hate comments on her socials and I stopped because the trolls would make her wish she had never been done. I made sure all our friends knew what she had done, so she was isolated from the friendship side too. I couldn't get to her family to make I tried to isolate her, but I figured I'd done enough. She'd been cheating on me for 2 years before I asked her to be my fiancé, then she thought she was entitled to my money. I'm sure she was regretting crossing paths with me. I couldn't plan my revenge on my friend because he'd already been in jail, and I felt like that was punishment enough. I couldn't believe I trusted these people. I had trusted these people, and they had decided to play me right in the face. The funny thing was that she thought she was entitled to my money just because she had been with me for 5 years, during which she had cheated on me for 3. Who the heck did women think they were? I'm glad I got out of this without too much damage. I had learned lessons and hardened my resolve. My fiancé gave me the rest of the money when I showed up at her parents' place. She managed to keep her parents from knowing about the problems she was facing in the outside world. She looked rough when I saw her, and it was well deserved. I was done feeling sorry for people who didn't deserve it. I hope she'll think twice before planning to dupe another man again. Redditors never trust anyone but themselves. Trust only your gut, because at any given moment, you're the only one looking out for yourself, not your best friend, not the woman you plan on marrying, and not even your parents. You'd be used like a toy when they feel you're so easy to play with. I hope you learn from my experience. I really hope you all do. No one is to be trusted.